Shalom, everybody. Welcome to this week's journey through Torah. This week, we're in Parsha Behar, which is often read in conjunction with Behukotai. It's the combination of these two that finish out this book of Leviticus. And so as we get into these, let's consider we're kind of closing out this portion. We're starting to round the corner to see the end. So we're starting to emphasize in this book these things that we need to remember, okay? What's the point of all of this? Be holy people, but then what Yahweh says he's going to do for us, he's going to redeem us, he's going to set us apart, we're going to be a holy people, and we have all these amazing promises of covenant and all these things he's going to do for us, all of this that we're starting to see. And again, we're going to come to realize that this is what Yeshua came to do. He came to bring a people to himself, he came to bring us to the Father, and so that as we are gathered in together in a people of covenant, we're going to learn to walk with him. We're going to learn to walk in his ways, and we're going to be with him forever, right? Yeshua says he came to set the captives free. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today in a matter of Jubilee. But before we get there, we kind of have to set up a little foundation first, okay? So Leviticus 25, verses 1 through 6, we talk about this. Adonai said to Moshe on Mount Sinai, tell the people of Israel, when you enter the land I am giving you, the land itself is to observe a Shabbat rest for Adonai. 6 years you will sow your fields, 6 years you will prune the grapevines and gather their produce, but the seventh year is to be a Shabbat of complete rest for the land, a Shabbat for Adonai. You will neither sow your field nor prune your grapevines. Verse 4, but in the seventh year is to be a Shabbat of complete rest for the land, a Shabbat for Adonai. You will neither sow your field nor prune your grapevines. You are not to harvest what grows by itself from the seeds left by the previous harvest, and you are not to gather the grapes of your untended vine. It is to be a year of complete rest for the land. But what the land produces during the year of Shabbat will be food for all of you, your servant, your maid, your employee, and anyone living near you. So what we find here is in the Shemitah years, there was a promise that's here. One, Yahweh says that if you are faithfully going to do this, that he will supply in this time frame until the time for the next planting and reaping, okay? Which is amazing because we say in this, you have to make this decision before you get there. You got to make this decision that you're going to do it beforehand. This is a test of faith. You can't say, well, let's wait till we get to the seventh year to see if we're going to plant. No, by the end of the sixth year, you got to know if you're planting. Okay, you have to make that decision ahead of time. And he says, if you're going to do this, then I will provide in the sixth year to last you through the seventh, and then whatever grows on of itself in the seventh will provide for you. Even then he says, I'm going to give you bumper crops and everything else till the time you plant in the eighth year and start reaping towards the end of the eighth year and into the ninth. So again, this is just a matter of provision that Yahweh says, if we just listen to him and we're faithful to him, that he will provide in the ways that he promised, okay? So what we find here, there's a connection that's going on here between Shabbat and the Jubilee. Well, how do we know? We haven't got to the Jubilee yet. Jubilee is 50 years, right? We're only talking 7. Yes, but there are 7 Shemitah years before the 50th year Jubilee, right? So there's a Shabbat years that are given here. And it says a Shabbat for the land, a Shabbat for Yahweh. So again, these are not just for the people. It's not just that, but it's for the land itself is to observe this. And think about this for a minute. If you're an agricultural society and you're not out here and you're not working the fields every day, what are you doing? You're spending time with your family. You're spending time with your neighbors. This gives you the opportunity to study and to talk about the word, to get into the word, to do all these things. And you would have a completely different perspective. And every 7 years, this would happen in your life. Okay, so there is a Shabbat that's given here. There's a Shabbat for a rest that's given here. And we truly won't understand the Jubilee years until we first off Shabbat. That's this decision that we will do what he said. It's kind of like the manna too, right? On the 6th day, you had to make the decision if you were going to gather the double, like he said, because it's not going to be there on the 7th, right? So again, he will provide in that 6th for the 7th. Leviticus 25, 8 and 10. So you were to count 7 Shabbats of years, 7 times 7 years, that's 49 years. And then on the 10th day of the 7th month, on Yom Kippur, you were to sound a blast of the shofar. You were to sound the shofar all through your land, and you were to consecrate the 50th year, proclaiming freedom throughout the land to all its inhabitants, and it will be a yovel for you. You will return everyone to the land he owns, and everyone is to return to his family. Guys, this is declared on Yom Kippur, and in the 49th year, so that this proclamation goes forward, so that when you enter the 50th year, this is happening in that time. In other words, it's setting up the stage ahead of time. It's setting it up to get ready for it. It's coming. Get ready. Here it is. We're about to enter into it. It's being announced on Yom Kippur. Interesting. We'll come back to that. But 2 Corinthians 3:17 says, the Lord is the Spirit. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty, or there is freedom. And that's it. He came to set the captives free. We were slaves to sin. We were oppressed by the ways of the world. But Yahweh came to set us free from that and come to have a place to serve him. Now, in Leviticus 25:11, it says, the 50th year will be a Yovel for you. You shall neither sow nor reap what grows of itself. It doesn't mean you can't eat. He's just saying you're not going to go out and do massive planting or massive harvesting or anything like that. Whatever grows of itself, you can partake of, but you're not going to go out and harvest it all. Okay? So when he talks about this, safiach is the word being used there, something that falls off or something that grows on its own. The root is safach, which means to scrape out or to gather together or cleave. So what we have here is this word safach can mean a falling off, but it can also mean a joining to. So this idea is a matter of faith and in trust to Yahweh, and having faith and trusting in him, we are joining to him, and we're seeing the promises that he laid for us as his people and the connection that he had to the land that he had for promise as well. Matter of fact, we see in this Parsha who the land belongs to. Who does it belong to? It belongs to Yahweh, right? But he has given us to dwell in the land with him. Leviticus 25:23 says, the land shall not be sold forever, for the land is mine, and you are strangers and sojourners with me. See that? We don't own the land. Yahweh owns the land, but he gave us rule over it. He said, you are dwelling here with me. You are strangers and sojourners, which brings out another interesting point. Deuteronomy 10:19 says, love the stranger because you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Isaiah 14:1 says, for Yahweh will have mercy on Yaakov, and he will yet choose Israel and set them in their own land, and the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. See that? This cleave, safach, is the same in 25:11, that which grows of itself. So he says the strangers will be joined, this joining in cleaving to the house of Yaakov. So again, this coming in together, this house of Jacob. Well, who was the house of Jacob? It was Israel. So we say even the strangers that are in the nations, when they want to serve the one true God, they're going to come to join with the house of Jacob. They're going to join Jacob, Yaakov, Israel, and worshiping the one true God. See another picture of this in Ezekiel 37:16 and 17, where it says that to take these two sticks, and write on one for the children of Israel, his companions, along with Judah. So we have havarav, this word joining with, and his companions to Judah and his companions. This is joining with them. Okay, so Judah and those joining with him, and then for Yosef, the stick of Ephraim, the house of Israel, his companions, and all those that are joined with him. And then these two are to become one in Yahweh's hands. Okay, he says it'll be one in your hand, but we know as you continue to read on, Yahweh says, you bring them near to one another, and I will make them one. So again, the idea is that we don't remain separate. The idea is that we serve the one true God, but we are joining in with a people called Israel and coming in to worship the one true God, knowing that Yeshua is gathering all people in together. We talked a little bit about that in last week's Parsha. Matter of fact, we even addressed this in Zechariah 8:22 and 23, where it says 10 men from all the nations of all the languages are going to take hold of the skirt of one who is a Jew, saying, we'll go with you, for we know God is with you. The only way you can have 10 men representing all nations and all languages is if it is the 10 tribes, the 10 that were scattered into all the nations and assimilated because of idolatry. They were exiled. But yet Yahweh says, though they were scattered, they will return. We see this many, many places again and again. Back to Leviticus 25, verses 8 to 13. It says, you shall count 7 weeks of years, 7 times 7 years, so that the time of the 7 weeks of years shall give you 49 years. And you shall sound the loud trumpet on the 10th day of the 7th month. On the day of atonement, you shall sound the trumpet throughout all your land. And you shall consecrate the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. And it shall be a jubilee for you, when each of you shall return to his property, and each of you shall return to his clan. See this? So this proclaiming of Jubilee is 50th year. It's also a release of debts. It happens every 7 years. But in the 50th year, every person, no matter where they are, is to return home and come back to the land and the place that was given to their ancestors, the place that was their heritage and inheritance. So when Yahweh says this Jubilee, for Jubilee to be declared, all Israel from wherever they are to be brought back in and brought back home, which again, Yeshua came to gather every tongue, tribe, and nation back in to all be gathered to one people set apart for Yahweh as a people called Israel. Leviticus 25:11, the 50th year will be a jubilee for you. In it, you will neither sow nor reap what grows of itself, nor gather the grapes from the undressed vines, for it is a jubilee. It shall be holy for you. You may eat the produce of the field. In this year of Jubilee, each of you shall return to his property. See that? So like we said, Yovel, the Jubilee, cannot be declared until all tribes can return home. So technically, the Jubilee cannot be pronounced without knowing where all the tribes are. You can't say all Israel is going to return home if we don't know where they are. And again, who did Yeshua say he came for? Yeshua said, I've come for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. I've come to gather in together all those that have been scattered. Leviticus 25:10, again, consecrate the 50th year to proclaim freedom to the land to all its inhabitants. And everyone is to return to the land he owns, and everyone is to return to the family. Yahweh says in many places that I'm going to bring you from the nations and bring you back home. Yeshua said in Matthew 10:6, go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Matthew 15:24, he said, I was sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. In John 10:14-16, Yeshua says, I'm the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own knows me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. And I have other sheep that are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice, and there will be one flock and one shepherd. So it's believed that when the Messiah comes, he will return all people to the land and declare the Jubilee. And the Jubilee was to be declared on Yom Kippurim, on Yom Kippur. Yeshua declared the start of this work that we read in Isaiah 61, but we see in Luke 4:21, he says, today, as you heard it read, this passage in the Tanakh is fulfilled. In Isaiah 61, he's declaring this freedom, declaring these things, and we know this is going to be a gathering in of all people, but this is also to be done on Yom HaKippurim is when the Jubilee was to be declared. Now, let's keep moving forward. We're going to come back to that. John 11:47 says, the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered in the council, and they said, what are we to do? This man performs many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him. The Romans will come and take away both our place and nation. But one of them, Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, said to them, you know nothing at all. Verse 50, nor do you understand. It is better for you that one man should die for the people, and not the whole nation should perish. And he did not say this of his own accord, but being the high priest that year, he prophesied that Yeshua would die for the nation, and not for the nation only, but also gather into one the children of God who were scattered abroad. See that? So we say Yeshua is our high priest. Picture that, guys. Yeshua is our high priest. So how can the death of the high priest gather people together? That's a biblical principle. Because think about this. If someone had committed manslaughter, if someone had committed a transgression and they were guilty, and it wasn't, premeditated, it wasn't murder, but they did commit a trespass, they did commit manslaughter, something happened there, they could go to one of the Levite cities and they could have a place of sanctuary there, and they would be safe there. But then at the death of the high priest, they could return back home, go back home to their land, go back to their family, and come back to the place of return. This was a principle that was given in the Torah. And so when Caiaphas says that this one man could die so that all those who were scattered can be brought back in, he's essentially saying Yeshua is a high priest without actually saying it. See? So this death of the high priest was a type of return and a type of restoration for the people of Yahweh. In the book, The Tabernacle Prefigured, Michael Morales says, consider the high priest as symbolizing Adam and his entrance into the Holy of Holies on the Day of Atonement as an ascent. The priest represented a restored creation as pertaining to humanity. He had to be perfect as a man. The high priest was also believed to be a second Adam, and it may even be precisely because he is an Adam figure that the priest's sin propagated guilt among the entire people. We see that in Leviticus 4:3, says the high priest sins, he brings guilt on the people. So this death of the high priest was a matter of a type of return for the people. So the high priest's atonement was not only accomplished on the Day of Atonement, but even finally through his own death. At the pinnacle of the system stood the high priest. These Day of Atonement ceremonies enable God to continue dwelling among his people despite their sinfulness. The atoning work of the high priest culminated in his death. This purged the land of the blood guilt associated with violent death and allowed those convicted of manslaughter to leave the cities and return home. We see this again in Numbers 35, verses 28 to 32. Romans 5:8-12 says this, "But God demonstrates his own love for us in that the Messiah died on our behalf while we were still sinners. Therefore, since we have now come to be considered righteous by means of his bloody sacrificial death, how much more will we be delivered through him from the anger of God's judgment? For if we were reconciled with God through his son's death when we were enemies, how much more will we be delivered by his life now that we are reconciled?" Verse 11. "And not only will we be delivered in the future, but we are boasting about God right now because he has acted through our Lord Yeshua the Messiah, through whom we have already received that reconciliation." Here's how it works. It was through one individual that sin entered the world, and through sin, death. And in this way, death passed through the whole human race inasmuch as everyone sinned. Go down to Romans 5:18. "In other words, just as it was through one offense that all people came under condemnation, so also it is through one righteous act that all people came to be considered righteous. For just as through the disobedience of one man many were made sinners, so also through the obedience of the other man many will be made righteous." And this is what we see. Galatians 3 gives examples of that. Galatians 3 verses 8, 14, 29 says, "The scripture foreseeing that God would justify the Gentiles by faith, preached the gospel beforehand to Abraham, saying, 'In you shall all the nations be blessed.'" Go back to Genesis 12 and you read this. This word, and all will be blessed, is v'nivrachu, which can also be read as grafted in. Okay, verse 14, Galatians 3:14, "So that in Messiah Yeshua the blessing of Abraham might come to the Gentiles, so that we might receive the promised Spirit through faith. And if you are the Messiahs, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise." Ephesians 2 verses 10 to 13 says that you who were once far off, you were Gentiles, you were in the nations, you were removed from the Messiah, you were removed from the commonwealth of Israel, you were removed from all of these things, that now in Messiah Yeshua, you who were far from covenant, far from promise, far from the commonwealth of Israel, have now been brought near. In other words, in Messiah Yeshua, he is gathering all people together because he can. He stood in that high priest's office for us to spiritually and once and for all make atonement for us and bring us into a place of relationship and right standing with Yahweh. It is the Messiah that will declare the Jubilee and gather in all the nations. But you can't bring the gathering in till you do the Jubilee, but you can't do the Jubilee until you're ready to gather in. Matthew 15:24, Yeshua says, "I was sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." Romans 11:17 says, "There were branches that were broke off, but they will be grafted back in." Hebrews 9:22 says, "Almost all things were by the law purged with blood. Without the shedding of blood, there's no remission of sins." Interesting thing here. Okay? It says without the shedding of blood, there's no remission of sins. What was the idea of the shedding of blood? The shedding of blood that was given here in Hebrews 9:22 and the verses leading up to it, it's talking about Yom Kippurim, the Day of Atonement. And talking about how Yeshua went into the most holy place, not made with human hands. Okay, this is only on the Day of Atonement that this was done. And so we're talking about atonement being provided, which is interesting because remission of sins isn't just forgiveness as we read. It's talking about atonement. Because we read here, it says the word aphesis is the word that's used there in the Greek, but literally in the Hebrew related word, it means yovel, jubilee. Without atonement, there's no Jubilee. This is how we look at that. And so that kind of changes our perspective a little bit, right? Without atonement being provided, there is no Jubilee. And that's absolutely true because the Jubilee was proclaimed on the Day of Atonement right after the Yom HaKippurim service in the 49th year. So without atonement being provided first, they could not proclaim the Jubilee. So we see in Leviticus 16, verses 32 to 34, it says, the priest who is anointed and consecrated as priest in his father's place will make atonement, wearing the holy linen garments. And he will make atonement for the sanctuary, for the tent of meeting, and for the altar, and for the priests, and for all the people of the assembly. And this shall be a statute forever for you, that atonement will be made for all the people of Israel once in the year because of their sins. And Moses did as Yahweh commanded him. So back to Hebrews 9, verses 11 to 14, it reads, when the Messiah appeared as Kohen Gadol of the good things that are happening already, then through the greater and more perfect tent, which is not man-made, that's not of this created world, he entered the holiest place once and for all, and he entered not by means of the blood of goats and calves, but by the means of his own blood, thus setting people free forever. For if the sprinkling ceremonially unclean persons with the blood of goats and the bulls and the ashes of the heifer restores their outward purity, he's saying this is a matter of outward purification being restored, and talking about atonement and these things that were done outwardly. Verse 14 says, then how much more the blood of the Messiah, who offered through the eternal Spirit, offered himself to God as a sacrifice without blemish, will purify our conscience from works that lead to death, so that we can serve the living God. What we find here is this: to have faith, and we will dwell safely in the land. If we have faith, we will dwell safely. That's it. Leviticus 25:18 says, therefore you shall do my statutes and keep my rules and perform them, and you will dwell in the land securely. So the question is this: are we obedient to Yahweh only when it makes sense to us? Are we obedient to Yahweh only when we deem it prudent? Are we obedient to Yahweh only when we feel like it? Are we obedient only when we want to be obedient? Are we obedient only when it just lines up with what I want to do anyway? We show our faith by our obedience to the word of Yahweh. We show our faith by walking with him, right? 1 Peter 2:7 and 8 says, now to you who keep trusting, he is precious. But those who are not trusting, the very stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Also, he is a stone that will make people stumble, a rock over which they will trip, and they are stumbling at the word, disobeying it, even as planned. So this blessing for the 6th year that we're talking about, you got to do the 6th year to get to the 7th, and you got to do that first 7 to do 7 more to make 49 to get to 50, right? It's a process. It's a process. There's blessing in preparation for the 6th year. There's blessing in preparation for the 6th day, like the manna that was gathered every day, right? You had to be faithfulness. You had to go work it. You had to get that provision of it. You gathered it, and you walked in faith that God was true at his word, and he meant what he said. Same with Shabbat. It's an act of faith. Yes, it's an act of obedience, and it's a sign that you don't belong to you, but it is an act of faith to do it. This teaches us that provision is from Yahweh, that he is the one that provides for us, that he is the one, he desires this place of relationship with us. When the Shabbat was made, he ceased from his creating, and he set apart, called it holy, made it holy, the Shabbat. And he said, in this time, we read in Leviticus 23, the gathering in of all the people. Gather in together. It's a holy convocation. We gather in together for Shabbat, stop our creating, stop our working, and come together, worship Yahweh, have a relationship with him, and relationship with one another. This is a holy convocation. You can't run from God. You can't hide from him. He's calling us out of the ways of the world so that we can be gathered in together to be one people. All of this, Behar, gathering together in the mountain, gathering together, guys, at his feet, gathering together to be with him and to learn to walk with him in his ways, okay? Well, guys, that's all I have for you for this week, this portion. I pray this has been a blessing to you, and I pray this has challenged you as well. And if it has been a blessing, then please share it in whatever avenue you watch or listen. Share these to help get these continue to be out there. And if this has been a blessing to you, then also please consider making a donation so that you can help us keep these videos moving along and being produced and being put out there, okay? So guys, until next time, be blessed, be a blessing, and shalom.